Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and we are building Janky decks in Commander. And this is the result of my Should Be Commanders video. So if you haven't checked that one out, my most recent iteration of that video where I take non-legendary creatures that I think sort of feel like legendary creatures, but more importantly are very interesting build-arounds. Just talk about them and then I put them in a poll and you guys go vote and decide which one wins and which one I'm going to build a deck with. This was an incredibly close poll, and I will show you it here. Immerstern Predator, Grand Architect, and Mirrorwood Treefolk. All three of those commanders are only separated by a single vote, so it was incredibly close. I might have to revisit those other two, because obviously a lot of people want to see those as well. Mirrorwood Treefolk, though, was the winner here, just by a hair. A suggestion I got from one of my patrons, so 3 and a green, Treefolk 2/4, has 2 white and a red. The next time damage would be dealt to Mirrorwood Treefolk this turn, that damage is dealt to any target instead. So very interesting ability. Of course, the first thing to note here is that our commander is Naya colors, right? Because it's a green card with the white and the red pip on there. So we're going to be in Naya colors. This is actually a really powerful ability if you can get working really well, right? Because of course, the next time your commander takes damage, you can shoot anything with that damage. So you're saving your commander on top of the fact that you're throwing damage around. That is sort of going to be the win con for this deck. Of course, as a lot of people will point out, it is a little mana intensive, right? 4 mana to activate your commander's ability is a bit much. You don't always want to be leaving 4 mana open. We do have some help here, right? In Braid of Fire and Thran Turbine, these are cards that I just keep going back to the well with all the time. Whenever your commander has an activated ability that you can activate at any time, right? They're just giving you free mana. Thran Turbine gives us 2 colorless on our upkeep. Braid of Fire will give us red mana and it will only get better, right? The longer the Braid of Fire sits on the battlefield, of course, it's going to keep adding counters with that cumulative upkeep and keep adding more and more red mana. We only need 3, right? As soon as we get up to 3 red mana with our Braid of Fire, it will pay for our commander's ability except for the 1 white. So it will lessen the cost, which is really, really good. And of course, our commander's ability says the next time damage would be dealt to Mirrorwood Treefolk this turn. So if we activate this ability on our upkeep, as long as our commander doesn't take damage until our main phase, we're then able to do whatever we want, because probably most of the stuff we want to be doing will be on our main phase. Now, the very obvious direction here is, okay, well, we want to be punching our own commander, so the stop punching yourself strategy works really well here, which of course has been around in the format for a long, long time. Obviously, a Jared Carthelian deck is the best comparison here, and you could go see a Jared Carthelian deck because it is a Naya commander. It's going to have a lot of the similar cards, right? And of course, we could throw Jared Carthelian in here as well because we're in the strategy of we're dealing lots of damage to our own creatures. Boros Reckoner, Ill-Tempered Loner, both fantastic fits. Again, doing something very similar to what our commander is doing. I know people will just look at these and say, oh, well, aren't these just straight up better because we don't have to pay the mana? If damage gets dealt to Boros Reckoner, we can just throw that damage to something else. Well, no, because our commander is preventing the damage, right? It's redirecting the damage. The Boros Reckoner, when it gets hit with a lightning bolt, can redirect the damage, but then it just immediately dies. We don't want our commander to be dying all the time. It's going to take the damage and then redirect it, and our commander will be fine. That's what makes that ability a lot better. We don't want to be recasting our commander all the time. Of course, Stuffy Doll and Brash Taunter, 2 of the best examples of creatures that want to have damage dealt to them. So of course, they're going to be auto includes in this deck. We got Brood Hatch, Nantuko in here, Hornet's Nest. These are also fantastic creatures that want to have damage dealt to them. Both are going to be creating tokens. And of course, the most important wording here is that many. Both of these will be creating insect tokens equal to the damage dealt to them, right? It doesn't matter that they have a 1 and a 2 toughness. If they get 8 or 10 damage dealt to them, they're going to be creating that many insect tokens. That's the kind of stuff we want in this deck. Hungering Hydra and Phytohydra, both also very great includes in this deck because damage dealt to them is going to put counters on them, right? Hungering Hungering Hydra says whenever Hungering Hydra is dealt damage, put that many +1/+1 counter on it. Now, the important thing here, and I actually will be making a rules video about replacement effects pretty soon here. Phytohydra says if damage would be dealt to Phytohydra, put that many +1/+1 counters on it instead. That's a replacement effect. It has the if and the instead that you're looking for. Hungering Hydra is not. So what's going to happen with Hungering Hydra is it's going to be dealt the damage, and if it survives, it will put the counters on it. If it dies to the damage, if you just cast a Blasphemous Act and kill your Hungering Hydra, there's no one left to put the counters on, right? Phytohydra, on the other hand, will work this way because that damage is being prevented and you're putting the counters on it instead. Very important wording there, but both work great in the deck. Stormwild Caprador, another great fit that is doing a similar thing, right? 2 and a white bird goat, 1/3 with flying. If non-combat damage would be dealt to Stormwild Caprador, prevent that damage, put a +1/+1 counter on Stormwild Caprador for each 1 damage prevented this way. So again, this is not going to actually be taking the damage. The damage will be prevented, and then we'll be putting +1/+1 counters on it. It is non-combat damage, and that actually does matter here. There is going to be a distinction between the non-combat damage and the combat damage with some of these cards. Our commander doesn't care about it. This card does, though. Our commander can redirect any kind of damage, which will be, of course, really, really important. Now, obviously, the best card in this deck, also one of the best board wipes in the entire format, is Blasphemous Act. This is going to be the best card in the deck for sure. For 2 reasons. One, it's dealing a ton of damage, right? So this is 13 damage that is going to be dealt to our commander. We pay the 4 mana, and of course you got to pay the 4 mana beforehand, right? You can't do it as a reaction. Before the Blasphemous Act resolves, we have to pay the 4 mana, and then the 13 damage that would get dealt to our Mirrorwood Treefolk can go to one of our opponent's faces if we want to, because likely all their creatures are going to be dead from the Blasphemous Act already. And then remember, all the other creatures that we have in play that would be taking damage from this as well, right? That's why we want all those creatures, because when we cast that Blasphemous Act, it should be almost a game ender. We should be getting so much advantage out of it. We're destroying all our opponent's creatures. We're redirecting damage from our commander. And then we also happen to have maybe our Hornet's Nest in play, which is going to be creating 13 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch, right? So it's going to be massive advantage for us. And you want to make sure that's the case, because Blasphemous Act is probably the best card in the deck. You want to make sure you're getting a massive payoff when you cast it. Don't just use this as a board wipe. There's lots of board wipes in this deck, so don't just waste this one. Of course, the other reason why this one is so good in the deck is why it's so good in Commander, because it's likely only going to cost 1 red mana, right? Our Commander's ability is a little pricey, so we don't want board wipes that are going to cost a ton of mana, right? So Chain Reaction, for example, another fantastic board wipe that can end up doing a ton of damage to all of our creatures and our Commander, which is what we want. But even with just this, 4 mana for your Chain Reaction, 4 mana for your Mirrorwood Treefolk, that's 8 mana. That's quite a bit. We are in green. There is a lot of ramp in this deck. I also put a couple of those ritual type effects in as well, so that we can have some of those big turn plays. So Star of Extinction, for example, right? That's a 7 mana board wipe. Now it's going to deal 20 damage to all the creatures and our commander as well. So that's some massive payoff. But of course, with our commander's ability, that's 11 mana total. That's a whole lot of mana. So that's why I have something like a Mana Geyser in here, right? You want to time this appropriately. We got our Mana Geyser. Now we can cast the Mana Geyser, get a ton of mana. That's when we cast our Star of Extinction and do that whole big payoff. So you want to line up these things appropriately. But again, because our commander does have that mana intensive ability, can't be doing it all the time, or we need cheaper ways to sort of get the effect off of our commander. Fight effects will work here, right? So an Uvenwald Tracker, for example, and I have a few fight effects in this deck. This is another way that we can do this, and this is a direct way that we can do it. Uvenwald Tracker, of course, says 1 and a green tap, target creature you control fights another target creature. So this is a 2 mana ability. Our commander's ability costs 4. So this is 6 mana total. That's not bad. We want to be doing this on a creature that has obviously a really, really big power, right? That's what we want. Now, I guess we could try and fight that creature and kill it. Our commander only has a 2 power, so that seems unlikely. More so what we're looking for is our opponent has that giant creature in play. We can target that. That's why fighting works good, because now we get to choose the creature that we can fight fight with. So we pick the biggest creature on the board. It's an 8/8 creature. It's going to deal 8 damage to our commander. Now, of course, we get to throw 8 damage around. So fight effects work good here, but also a great way to do this. And I was trying to think of other ways to try to make our commander's ability work where we're not just casting board wipes all the time, because first of all, that's not super fun in a commander game. Also, mana intensive, right? There's not a lot of Blasphemous Acts in the game. There's only one. So how many board wipes can you cast and also use your commander's ability? We need some cheaper ways to use our commander's ability. And I was also thinking we need some ways to use it on our opponent's turns as well, right? And forcing our opponents to attack is a way that we can do this, right? So I have Goblin Diplomats in the deck, for example. Tap, each creature attacks this turn if able. Now, this isn't going to force your opponents to attack you, but this is a win-win situation for us, right? So we have our commander on the table, we have the 4 mana available to us, and our opponents will know that we do. On their turn, of course, before combat, we tap our Goblin Diplomats, we force them to attack. Now their creatures have essentially just become goated, right? They can attack us if they want to, or they can attack our opponents, which is great as well, right? This is a win-win scenario for us. If they attack us, and by the way, if anyone attacks us at any point during the game for any reason, our commander becomes a phenomenal blocker. As long as we got the mana open for that ability, opponent swings in with that giant creature, we chump with our commander, we pay the 4 mana, and now any damage that would be dealt to our commander will be dealt to that opponent's face as well, or whatever creature you want. Maybe you could possibly just kill the creature that just attacked you, right? Again, if they're attacking with a 7/7 creature, your Mirrorwood Treefolk is going to take 7 damage, and you reflect the damage right back on that creature and kill it. So this sort of becomes almost a bit of a pillow fort deck in a way. Bassandra, Battle Seraph, really bad commander. This is a commander that I tried to build a deck around back in the day. It's just got such a horrible combination of abilities because players can't cast spells during combat, but you can pay a red to have target creature attack this turn if able. So it's like, okay, well, I can force creatures to attack, but I can't cast spells during combat, so that sort of handicaps my commander's ability. Really bad design in my opinion. Anyway, we are forcing our opponent's creatures to attack, which is great. Okay, we can activate abilities during combat, no problem there, you just can't cast spells. So now, on our opponent's turn, their giant creature, we force it to attack, right? And again, this can just be a goad scenario. Our opponent has a giant creature, we pay 1, force it to attack. They can attack us if they want to lose their creature or have that damage reflected to their face or whatever. Likely they'll probably just attack one of our other opponents, which is great. Win-win for us. The best one I found for this is Trove of Temptation. This is a card that really doesn't see any play in Commander at all because it has such a weird effect. It's only good if you actually want your opponents to be attacking you, which in this case we do. 3 and a red enchantment. Each opponent must attack you or a planeswalker you control with at least 1 creature each combat if able. And at the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token. So that's pretty handy. So you're looking at this card and what deck does this fit in? Well, it fits in this one pretty darn good, I think. Again, we're going to have that 4 mana open. And what's going to happen is on our opponent's turn, they got to attack us with a creature. Okay, well, what are they going to attack us with? Are they going to attack us with their biggest creature that they actually want to attack us with? Well, if they do, again, we get back to that situation where we're just going to reflect that damage back to your creature or back to your face. Okay, well, the other option is they'll just attack us with a small creature. No problem. Okay, go ahead and attack us with that 2/2 creature. We'll just block that with our Mirrorwood Treefolk, and we're not going to prevent any damage in this case. We're just going to kill it, right? Their options here are either they attack with a big creature and they end up losing it, or they attack with a small creature and they end up losing it, right? Sort of a lose-lose for them. So this is going to be a really fun include in the deck. And then I also threw Timber Protector in here because our commander is a Treefolk, so why not? This is going to give other Treefolk creatures you control +1/+1. More importantly, though, it's going to give other Treefolk and forest you control indestructible. Having a commander with indestructible is really important. And yes, our commander will still take damage. For anyone who's curious, if your creature has indestructible, it still takes damage. It just doesn't get destroyed from that damage. So this will work great in the deck. Really interesting build around, I think. I don't know. You know, there's a lot to work with here. Again, that Blasphemous Act play is probably the best option. You could end up just ending the game with a Blasphemous Act if you have the appropriate creatures in play. You could redirect some damage with your commander, redirect some damage with your Stuffy Doll. You can get some giant Stormwild, Caprador, Phytohydra creatures in play that you can then swing and close out the game with. There is going to be some giant plays in this deck for sure. It's an interesting one, no doubt. If you're interested in playing this deck, of course, the deck list is in the description below. And of course, you got to talk to your play group about it, right? This is not actually a legal commander in the format, of course, but we always have the rules here where you can talk to your play group. I can't imagine there would be anyone having a problem with this as your commander. I mean, it is not exactly super powered, but it is very interesting. So make sure you have a brief talk with your play group before you actually put this deck together to make sure they're okay with you playing it. But if you want to, again, the deck list is in the description below. That is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.